There was something theatrical about the way he walked into the office. Expensive shoes, too shiny. Shirt unbuttoned one notch too far. Confident in a way that only comes from never having to prove yourself. He didn't smile. He smirked. Lucas Harrington. Fresh MBA graduate, heir to the Harrington Group, and now, at just 29, the new vice president of global operations. My new boss. Technically. He strolled in on Monday morning with a cappuccino in hand and the swagger of a man who had already decided the building needed rebranding, restructuring, and people who looked like him in all the leadership seats. He didn't introduce himself to most of the team. Just walked straight into the executive conference room like he'd been waiting all his life to sit at that table. I watched him through the glass wall of my office. It wasn't large, but it was mine. Earned, not gifted. I had been with the company for 12 years. 5 of those years spent building our partnerships in Asia, especially with Jinlong Industries, one of our most profitable relationships. I was fluent in Mandarin, business culture, and subtle diplomacy. But to Lucas, I was just a name on a payroll sheet. Middle management. Replaceable. He didn't ask to meet me that day. Instead, I heard him through the wall. We need fresh minds. The old guard is holding us back. Old guard. That's what he called us. Those who had been here long enough to remember the company before the glossy website and buzzword strategy decks. I made no comment. You learn not to flinch at arrogance when you've been around long enough. By Tuesday, rumors swirled. Lucas was reviewing every department looking to optimize staffing. In other words, cuts were coming, and he wasn't wasting time. That afternoon, my assistant came in looking pale. He just let go of Marcus. From logistics. No warning. Marcus had been here almost 20 years. By Wednesday morning, there were gaps in desks and whispers in hallways. People stared at their monitors with tight shoulders, half waiting for their name to show up in an Outlook calendar invite with no subject line. I kept working. I had a video call scheduled with Mr. Chen from Jinlong on Friday, our quarterly check-in. It was one of the most sensitive conversations of the year. Every word mattered. Every pause, every gesture had cultural weight. Then, at 3:47 p.m., my name appeared in an invite. Subject: Internal realignment discussion. Attendees: Lucas Harrington, HR. My stomach didn't sink. It settled. Calm. I already knew what this was. I walked into the conference room at exactly 4 p.m. Lucas was leaning back in his chair like a talk show guest, HR beside him, tablet open. "Olivia?" he said without looking up. "Thanks for coming in. This'll be brief." I nodded, took a seat. "We've been reviewing our operational structure," he continued, fingers drumming lightly on the desk. "And frankly, it's clear we need people who can think on their feet. People who bring innovation, not just process. You've done solid work, but your position doesn't align with where we're headed." I glanced at the HR rep who wouldn't meet my eyes. I had trained her 3 years ago. Lucas smiled then. A small, smug thing. "We need people smarter than you." I didn't flinch. I didn't argue. I folded my hands neatly in my lap and replied, voice steady. "Good luck on Friday." That made him pause. "What's Friday?" "Your quarterly call with Jinlong," I said, as if reminding a child of an overdue assignment. "It's on your calendar. Mr. Chen doesn't speak English. His interpreter is on leave. And your new structure doesn't include anyone who speaks Mandarin." Lucas's expression flickered just slightly, then returned to confident indifference. "We'll manage," he said dismissively. "This is a modern company. We'll find a solution." I stood, nodded once, and left the envelope he slid across the table untouched. Back at my desk, I calmly collected my things. A few colleagues watched with wide eyes, too afraid to speak. I gave a small wave to Linda in accounting, who had been my lunch partner for a decade. She mouthed, "I'm so sorry." I left without a scene. No email, no speech, just the quiet certainty that some storms don't need thunder. They begin with silence and end in consequences. And Friday was coming. Friday morning arrived like the calm before a storm. Gray skies, still air, and a kind of quiet you don't usually find in a busy office. Not even the sound of keys clacking carried the same rhythm. People were tense. They smiled too tightly, walked too briskly, and I wasn't even there anymore. At least, not officially. I sat in the window seat of my apartment, coffee in hand, laptop open, watching emails from former coworkers trickle in. Nothing direct, just fragments of gossip, nervous speculation. He's presenting to Jinlong solo? No interpreter? Didn't Olivia handle that account? Yes, I did. For 8 years. I was the reason that account never wavered through 3 reorganizations, 1 lawsuit, and a pandemic. Mr. Chen didn't trust easily. Our relationship had taken years to build. Carefully, quietly, over dinners, thoughtful gifts, and learning his preferences down to the brand of green tea he favored. He once told me, "We don't just do business with people we pay. We do business with people we respect." Lucas didn't understand that. He thought being clever was the same as being wise. Across the city, in a glass building lined with abstract art and executive ambitions, Lucas was preparing for that call. He wore a tailored navy suit and had his hair styled to boardroom perfection. A slideshow was cued. Buzzwords lined every slide. Global synergy, cost optimization, future-forward efficiency. He didn't know those words didn't mean much in Mandarin. He hadn't even practiced pronouncing Jinlong. By 10 a.m., the conference room on the 17th floor was full. Marketing leads, the new liaison intern, 2 HR managers, and of course, Lucas. He paced slightly before the screen, checking the lighting, adjusting the webcam angle. Mr. Chen logged in on time. The call started with a sharp chime, followed by a polite greeting from one of Mr. Chen's senior aides. "Good morning, Mr. Chen is here." Lucas beamed. "Great. Welcome, everyone. I'm thrilled to be handling this conversation today." The aide blinked. "Where is Ms. Olivia Lane?" Lucas cleared his throat. "Ms. Lane is no longer with our company. I'll be your primary contact moving forward." There was silence on the other end. Mr. Chen said something in Mandarin. Quiet, deliberate. Lucas looked around, clearly waiting for someone to respond. No one did. He frowned. Did anyone catch that?" The intern scrambled. I think he's asking why Ms. Lane isn't here. Or maybe when she'll return." Lucas forced a smile. "Please assure him that we're modernizing our approach and look forward to a more dynamic partnership." The intern stared at the screen, frozen. Mr. Chen responded again, more sternly this time. It wasn't just curiosity now. It was offense. Back at home, I knew the tone. I could hear it in my mind like a song I'd played too often to forget. Mr. Chen didn't appreciate being surprised. He didn't appreciate disrespect. 15 minutes into the meeting, nothing of value had been exchanged. No progress made. Lucas tried jokes. He attempted to present the new quarterly plans. He stumbled over numbers. He used slang no one translated. He called the company Jinlong Corporation, a name they had politely corrected 5 years ago. It didn't take long. Mr. Chen stood up mid-call. Not abruptly, not rudely, just final. He spoke in Mandarin, looked directly at the camera, and then the screen went black. No goodbye, no courtesy exit. Just an empty Zoom window and the quiet panic of people who knew something had gone wrong but couldn't name what. By 10:45 a.m., the room had emptied. Lucas sat there, eyes flickering between the laptop and his own reflection in the glass. The intern whispered, "Should we reschedule?" He didn't answer. At 11:02, he called HR. At 11:16, he sent an email marked urgent to the CEO. And by noon, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I didn't answer. Then came the text. "Hey, Olivia. Can we talk?" Something weird happened with the Jinlong call. Something weird? I sipped my coffee slowly and stared out the window. The clouds were breaking now, sunlight spilling onto the balcony. A peaceful Friday morning with nothing to prove and no deadlines. He thought he could fire me like an extra line item on a budget. He didn't realize I wasn't a role. I was a relationship. And in business, relationships aren't easily replaced. They're earned, protected, respected. And when you break one, you lose everything that came with it. I didn't need to say anything yet. I just let the silence grow, like a crack in glass, widening with each second he didn't know what to do next. Because this wasn't about a Zoom call. It was about what came after. And I wasn't done. Not even close. The weekend came with no rest for Lucas. By Saturday morning, whispers had turned into questions. And by Sunday, questions into accusations. A $12 million annual partnership had just vanished without ceremony. And nobody, not even the CEO, had seen it coming. I didn't respond to his message. He sent two more. One was casual. No hard feelings, right? The next was a little more desperate. Can we hop on a quick call? Just to clear the air? Clear the air, as if he hadn't poisoned it himself. I spent Sunday with my sister, helping her plant herbs in her tiny backyard garden. She offered wine, a sympathetic ear, and didn't once ask what I was planning. She knew me too well. She knew silence was never inaction. It was calculation. By Monday, I had 3 missed calls from Ridgemont's HR department and 1 from the CEO's assistant. That was when I knew. The fire had started to spread. Inside the office, chaos bloomed quietly. The Jinlong debacle wasn't just about a single client. It was symbolic. It signaled to every international partner that Ridgemont no longer valued nuance, loyalty, or basic cultural respect. Other clients noticed. And they started asking questions. What happened to Olivia? Why weren't we informed? Are you sure this is the direction you want to go? Lucas tried to patch it, of course. He blamed technical difficulties, claimed there had been a scheduling error, and that new contacts were still onboarding. But you can't lie to people who already feel disrespected. The damage wasn't a leak. It was a flood. At 10:30 a.m. Monday, Lucas tried calling me directly. This time I answered. Olivia, he said, too cheerful, like someone trying not to sound like they're drowning. I waited. I think we got off on the wrong foot. I'd really like to talk. Maybe even explore bringing you back into the picture, just on a short-term basis. Consulting, maybe. Nothing official, of course. Nothing official. Just enough to save his reputation without admitting failure. Lucas, I said calmly, why would I come back? He laughed nervously. Come on, you know how these things go. Tempers flare, changes happen. I think we both want what's best for the company. He still didn't get it. You fired me because you thought you were smarter. Because you assumed the job was just translation and email threads, I said. But what I do isn't in a manual. It's in people. It's trust, built over years. A pause on the other end. Look, he said finally. Just come in. One meeting. That's all I'm asking. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I let the silence stretch long enough for him to hear what it really meant. You don't get to decide the terms anymore. Later that afternoon, I received an official email. A provisional consultancy arrangement had been drawn up and approved by legal. It offered access to client communications, full discretion, and no title. Just assistance. It was insulting in its attempt to be generous. But I accepted it. Not for the money. Not even for the power. For the stage. Because when someone hands you a microphone at the moment their empire is shaking, you don't decline it. You use it. On Tuesday morning, I walked back into Ridgemont for the first time since my firing. My name wasn't on the wall anymore, but my reputation hadn't vanished. Eyes followed me. Some looked relieved. Others looked guilty. No one said a word. Lucas greeted me in the lobby with that same strange charm. Olivia, glad you're here. We'll just get you set up in one of the conference rooms temporarily. Not an office. A glass cube in the middle of the operations floor. A visible reminder that I was there, but not back. That was fine. I didn't want to blend in anymore. By noon, I had access to the client database again. Jinlong's profile was untouched since I left. No contact since the Friday disaster. Mr. Chen hadn't responded to emails, and now 2 other clients from Singapore and Hong Kong had gone silent as well. Lucas stopped by my desk before the end of the day. "Everything going okay?" I nodded. "Fine." "Think you'll be able to help us restore the connection with Jinlong?" I looked at him, expression blank. "That depends." "On what?" "Whether they're willing to speak to you again," I said. "Because this time they're not expecting slides. They're expecting an apology." Lucas chuckled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Let's just get things back on track." But things weren't going back. Not to how they were before. This wasn't recovery. This was realignment. Only now, I was the one deciding what stayed and what got left behind. Wednesday morning at Ridgemont was unusually quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that comes after a misstep, when everyone's holding their breath to see if the ice is going to crack beneath them. I arrived just before 9 a.m. and settled into my glass cube. Still not an office, still intentionally temporary. The space felt like a zoo exhibit. People passed by pretending not to stare. Some nodded politely, others avoided eye contact. I recognized their silence. Survival mode. I'd lived it before. Lucas hadn't spoken to me since our brief exchange the day before. I wasn't surprised. His type didn't like proximity to their own mistakes. He thought I was here to help him fix a mess. He didn't realize I was here to document it. At 10:15 a.m., I initiated contact with Mr. Chen, not through Ridgemont's channels. I used a secure line I had maintained from my personal network. I didn't ask for a meeting. I asked for his forgiveness. In Mandarin, with measured humility, I said, "I regret that we parted under such abrupt and ungracious circumstances. You deserved more respect than was shown." There was a long pause. Then, "We noticed your absence immediately." He didn't say it with anger. He didn't need to. "I am no longer in a leadership role," I explained, "but I've been asked to assist as an advisor." Another pause. Then a short sigh. "Ridgemont has changed. You have not. We would speak with you again. On your own terms." I nodded slowly, even though he couldn't see me. "Thank you. I will be in touch." That afternoon, I updated Ridgemont's CRM records, logging a tentative re-engagement opportunity. I didn't mention the nature of the conversation, just the potential. That was enough to get Lucas's attention. He appeared at my desk with forced energy. "I heard there's movement. Chen responded?" He did. Lucas shifted his weight, visibly trying to contain his excitement. "So we're back in business?" "I said they would speak with me," I replied evenly. Lucas nodded quickly, missing the subtext entirely. "Perfect. We'll schedule a new call for Friday." "You should know," I added. "Mr. Chen expects a direct acknowledgement of what happened. He values sincerity above efficiency." Lucas hesitated. "We can draft a formal apology." "No," I said. "Not an email. Not a memo. They want to see your face." His smile froze. "Mine? You're the face that removed me. You're the one who told them, without saying a word, that their trust didn't matter." He exhaled, annoyed. "Fine. I'll prepare something." I nodded once. "Good. Just one more thing." Lucas raised an eyebrow. "Don't speak unless you're spoken to. I'll lead the conversation." He stared at me for a moment, mouth slightly open like he wanted to protest. But he didn't. Maybe for the first time he realized the power had shifted, and I wasn't giving it back. Thursday passed in quiet preparation. I reviewed notes from past meetings with Jinlong, updated my Mandarin glossary, and contacted a few of my own former mentors in Beijing, just to informally let them know I was back in the game. Not to brag, just to plant seeds. People remember competence, even when companies don't. Meanwhile, Ridgemont continued to unravel at the seams. 2 more international clients had requested delays in their upcoming negotiations. A Japanese firm had canceled a shipment mid-process. The CFO began requesting hourly updates on all sensitive accounts, and HR had initiated a hiring freeze. Lucas pretended to be unfazed, but the dark circles under his eyes told a different story. So did the way he clutched his tablet like a shield. His bright, polished energy from Monday had dulled into something more erratic. Jumpy, irritable, insecure. I watched it all from behind the glass, not out of satisfaction, out of clarity. This is what happens when you think relationships are replaceable, when you treat people like tools instead of bridges. Friday loomed. The second call with Jinlong was set for 10 a.m. I prepped a private briefing for Lucas that evening. Basic etiquette reminders, cultural do's and don'ts, phrases to avoid. I printed it out and placed it on his desk. He didn't say thank you. He just said, "I'll do my best." I didn't respond, because this wasn't about him anymore. It was about the foundation he'd cracked and whether the pieces could still be saved before everything collapsed. And whether, when it was over, anyone would still trust him to hold a hammer again. Friday morning arrived cloaked in stillness, the kind that clings to everything before something shatters. I was in early, 7:45 a.m. My blazer hung perfectly pressed on the coat rack, the coffee at my side untouched. I didn't need caffeine. I needed control. Lucas didn't show up until 9:20 a.m., flustered and wide-eyed with a folder tucked under one arm and the apology draft in the other. He looked at me as if hoping for approval. I didn't give it. Instead, I slid a revised version of the apology across the table, translated into formal Mandarin, laced with humility, honor, and the kind of phrasing you only learn by sitting across from someone for 10 years and listening to what isn't said. He glanced over it. "I don't know how to pronounce half of this." "Then don't." I met his eyes. "Let me speak." At 9:58 a.m., we entered the same conference room where, a week earlier, Lucas had watched his deal fall apart in silence. This time, he sat differently. Straighter, less arrogant. Still defensive, but cracked. The large monitor blinked to life. The Jinlong delegation joined precisely at 10 o'clock. Mr. Chen appeared at the center, two senior executives on either side, both with unreadable expressions. I greeted them in Mandarin, bowing my head slightly. "It is an honor to speak with you again." Mr. Chen nodded but said nothing. I continued, slowly, carefully. "We recognize the disruption that occurred during our last communication, and I personally wish to extend regret for the abrupt manner of my departure, and for the way in which your respect was disregarded." One of the executives leaned slightly forward, eyes narrowing in interest. Mr. Chen finally spoke. "This man," he said in Mandarin, nodding toward Lucas without even turning to him. "Is he the one who replaced you?" I didn't glance at Lucas. "He made the decision, yes." "Does he understand what he removed?" Mr. Chen's tone wasn't angry. It was clinical, like a teacher evaluating a student who had failed an important test. I chose my next words with precision. "He is beginning to." Lucas shifted in his chair. I could feel his discomfort pulsing beside me like heat. He didn't understand the words, but he knew the tone. And that was enough. Mr. Chen looked directly at me. "Are you at this company again?" I paused. "No," I said softly. "I'm assisting temporarily." As a courtesy, another silence followed. Long. Heavy. Then, "Would you consider representing us elsewhere?" "We are seeking long-term partners who value not only profit but understanding." Lucas inhaled sharply, as if slapped. I didn't look at him. "That conversation is one I'd be honored to have," I replied. "But not here. Not now." Mr. Chen inclined his head, signaling the meeting's end. "We will think. We appreciate your words, Miss Lane, and your integrity." The screen went black. Lucas sat frozen for several seconds. Then he exploded. "What the hell was that?" I remained still. "That was the closest thing you'll get to forgiveness. You let them offer you a job." His voice was rising now, panicked and shrill. "In the middle of our meeting, in our boardroom, Your boardroom? I cut in, calm and cool. Or your father's? He blinked, stunned. I didn't accept anything, Lucas. I honored your request. I gave you a second chance, and you're still blowing it. He stood pacing. You can't just walk away and make me look like the idiot here. I rose, collected my notes, and faced him fully. I didn't make you look like anything. You did that all on your own. He pointed at me, his voice cracking. If my father hears about this, he already knows. My words were quiet, but they hit like thunder. Lucas stepped back as if the air had been knocked from him. I continued. He called me Wednesday night. Asked why his longest-standing client had gone silent. I told him the truth. You thought you could play CEO in a sandbox filled with real partners and real consequences. He slumped into the chair. I was just trying to prove myself. I softened slightly. You still can, but not by pretending you don't need people. Not by firing those who do the work you haven't even learned to understand. He didn't reply. I left him there, in that glass box with his designer watch and crumpled notes, staring at the space where his certainty used to be. Back at my temporary desk, I packed the few belongings I had brought back. A pen, a notepad. Nothing sentimental. This was never going to be permanent. At 11:45 a.m., I sent a short email to HR. Subject: Conclusion of consultancy. Body: My work here is complete. Please consider this my final day. No anger, no drama, just the truth. As I walked out for the second and last time, I passed the receptionist who gave me a small nod of respect. The kind that comes from people who noticed. Outside, the sun had returned, bright and unforgiving. It felt like something had ended, and something else was about to begin. I didn't go home right away. Instead, I walked to a quiet cafe on 8th Street, ordered jasmine tea, and took a seat by the window. I needed a moment, not to grieve, not to celebrate, just to breathe. 12 years of loyalty, gone in a single sentence from a man who didn't know how to say thank you. And yet, I wasn't sad. I was free. My phone buzzed. A new message. Not from Lucas, from Mr. Chen. We are ready to talk, on your terms. I stared at the words for a long moment, then replied with equal simplicity. Next Tuesday. 9 a.m. I'll come to you. That was the difference between position and power. Lucas had the title, but I had the trust. And in the world of high-stakes partnerships, trust is currency. That weekend, word began to spread. Quietly at first. A whisper in the right circles. That Ridgemont's Asia accounts were unstable. That Jinlong was exploring new relationships. That something had gone wrong. And Olivia Lane wasn't part of the company anymore. I didn't feed the rumors. I didn't need to. By Monday morning, I had 4 voicemails from consulting firms, 3 LinkedIn messages from global strategy recruiters, and 1 very formal inquiry from Lawson and Reed Global Partners, the same firm that once lost a bidding war to Ridgemont because of how well I had managed the client. Now they were inviting me to lunch. By Wednesday, I had accepted their offer. A senior advisory role. Full autonomy. A salary Lucas wouldn't dare imagine. And more importantly, respect. A voice in the room. Not because I demanded it, but because I'd earned it. The office was in a tall glass tower overlooking the city, sunlight flooding every corner. It didn't feel like a place to hide. It felt like a place to build. I started that Friday, exactly 2 weeks after the day Lucas fired me. At Ridgemont, the unraveling had begun. Jinlong had officially pulled out of their contract. Another Southeast Asian partner requested reassignment. Internal restructuring stalled. The CFO issued an emergency memo asking departments to reduce travel, pause new hires, and submit risk assessments on all international deals. Lucas tried to spin the situation. He told the board it was just a dip, temporary instability, and growing pains. But people don't believe spin when the numbers don't lie, especially not investors. That same week, his father, the real CEO, returned from his business trip early and requested an unscheduled board review. I wasn't there, of course, but someone sent me a photo. Lucas, exiting the building with a box in his hands. His tie slightly loosened, eyes hollow. The golden boy had finally been told no. And it wasn't just about Jinlong. It was about every decision he made with arrogance instead of awareness, every dismissal, every shortcut. They had handed him a kingdom, and he treated it like a sandbox. Now the sand was slipping through his fingers. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt finished. Justice doesn't always come in fury or fire. Sometimes it arrives quietly, through competence, through memory, through the unwavering knowledge of your own worth. On my third day at Lawson & Reed, I walked into a meeting room with a familiar face. Mr. Chen stood as I entered, offered a respectful bow, and smiled. "Miss Lane," he said warmly, "it's good to see you where you belong." We shook hands. This time, there was no translation needed. The meeting lasted an hour. By the end of it, we had laid the groundwork for a renewed partnership. Not with Ridgemont, with us. He stood to leave, then turned and said, "Do they know what they lost?" I smiled gently. "They'll figure it out. One contract at a time." That evening, I sat at my new desk, the skyline shimmering outside the window. I had no plaque, no awards, no grand ceremony, just peace, and a name that now carried weight wherever I walked. Because I had proven the one thing men like Lucas never understand. You don't need power to be powerful. You need purpose. And when the storm clears, the ones who stand tall are not the loudest voices, but the ones who kept building even when no one was watching. They fired me to make space for someone smarter. But Friday proved what I always knew. You can't replace what you don't understand. And now they understood. Too late.